Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I have the pleasure to introduce you to Becky Toal. She is the CEO of Crowberry Consulting. She has over 16 years experience as an environmental and sustainability manager and has the skills in corporate responsibility, environmental and energy auditing, and sustainable procurement. She established Crowberry Consulting in 2006, and since then she has grown the business and services very, very much. Now she's working with many companies, helping them establish ISO management systems. The company itself, they provide consultancy on environment ethics and energy management. They are based in the UK. This webinar is going to teach you how to use ISO standards to manage the energy and environmental aspects in your company. So please, Becky, you can start now. Thank you so much for doing this.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. Hello, everybody who's on the webinar or maybe listening to this recording later on. As Andrea's explained, this is a session to sort of introduce ISO 14001 environmental management systems. I've also put 9001 there, which is quality, but I will also refer to the energy management standard, which is 50001. All becoming very, very similar in their structure. So I'll introduce the new transition standards, which were introduced in 2015, and the benefits for your company if you're considering going forward for an ISO and implementing that structure, and some of the sort of top tips and hints that you can look at throughout the implementation. So if I could have the next slide, please, Andrea. Okay. So yeah, thank you. Just a little bit of background about myself. I am what's called a lead auditor. So I'm an approved lead auditor with global certification bodies like SGS, DNVGL, and we are also a certified WE Connect business. And I've been to many of their events and met many of the other corporate members and WEB members. We're quite specialist in what we do in terms of providing support on energy management, ISO 50001. We do sustainable events, ISO 201, ethical auditing, including SEDEX and RJC. But 14001 is one of the core standards that we work on, the environmental family. And I have over 18 years experience of delivering this. And something that's quite interesting about the ISO standards is they're now all, every single one of them, based on risk-based thinking. So thinking about the risks and the opportunities to your business for quality, energy and environmental management. And this new structure that the International Standards Organization has released is called Annex SL, which is the second bullet point there, the new Annex SL structure. So if we could have the next slide, please, Andrea. Okay. Okay. Ooh, thank you. So by the end of this session, you hopefully will come away with more knowledge on this risk-based thinking, the new level structure that's been introduced, and have a bit more of an appreciation of the core changes to 14001, 9001, and we'll touch on energy as well, that can be applied to your organisation. So if we can have the next slide, please, Andrea. Okay, so just by way of introduction, the Annex SL Framework now applies to any new international standard that's being developed. The ISO standard for environmental has a very strong focus on strategic environmental management. So that's the direction of your business and your business plan and how that links to environmental management. There's also a very strong focus on leadership and commitment within the organisation, and how your business is demonstrating leadership on environmental management, and critically, how your organisation can be seen to protect the environment, if it's 14, customer satisfaction, if it's quality, and improve your energy performance, if it's ISO 50001. And this new version includes thinking about your life cycles, which is quite interesting. So thinking about the raw materials that you may use, how you purchase your products and services for your business, the transportation, the design, and ultimately end of life disposal and recycling or reusability of your products and services. So it's a different way of thinking, and it kind of forces you to address the touch points in your value chain around your products and services. And really, for the first time, the ISO 14001 now, with life cycle thinking, it's moving towards what we call the circular economy in the UK. The new standards also have a much stronger focus on communication and documentation. So if we could have the next slide, please, Andrea. Okay. So the new Annex SL Structure, for anybody out there who's ever read an ISO and thought, oh my goodness me, this is shocking, that pain, if you like, has been taken away. Bullet points 1 to number 10, they all look and feel the exact same. They all now start with scope, they move on to references, and by bullet point 3, they go into terms and definitions, which is actually quite helpful, especially on the energy management standard. If you're not sure what an energy baseline is, if you're not sure what an energy review is, if you're not sure what an energy performance indicator is, you can check back in section 3, terms and definitions. Section 4, context of the organisation. We're going to go into a bit more detail about that in a moment. Section 5, leadership, and we do interview senior managers and directors now during the audits of ISO management systems for the leadership clause. There's an awful lot of planning. Planning is about 70% of the ISO standards. So if you're starting out on this journey, the planning element, if you enjoy that, you'll appreciate it. Support section, number 7, includes competence, training and awareness, which we'll touch on in a moment. And section 8 is the real meat on the bones, your operational planning and controls, your process maps, your work instructions, your standard operating procedures, how you actually run your business and manufacture your product or service. And then we get into the back end of the standards, which is now called performance evaluation, at which point people can run out of the room, because it basically means auditing, internal and external auditing. Some people don't like that, but it does drive what's called continuous improvement, which is the final bullet point 10, which they now just simply call improvement. So if we could move forward, please, Andrea, on the slides. Thank you. So at the heart of all the ISO systems, your 9000 for quality, 14,001 for environmental, and 50,001 for energy, what we have now is an appreciation of risk-based thinking. So what is risk? Risk is the effect of uncertainty, and risk is often characterized by referring to the potential for an event and the consequences, or a combination of the potential event and the potential consequences. So risk can also be put into a matrix where we talk about likelihood, severity, and probability of something happening. Now, obviously, risk is all doom and gloom, and we think about the adverse effect, whereas the opportunity is the potential beneficial effects. And I'll give you an example. If you purchase paper for your organisation and you print onto paper, that paper could be purchased from Forestry Stewardship Council certified sources of timber and products and paper from the tree. So you can actually contribute to the replanting of the trees in those forests. So although you're purchasing paper which is going to have a damaging effect because you have to chop a tree down, the opportunity is you can purchase paper from sources where they replant the trees. So there is a really strong link between these ISOs and 31000 series, which if you have time, I would recommend that you purchase that standard and really get to understand what's a risk, what's an opportunity. So if we could have the next slide, please, Andrea. Okay, thank you. PDCA is still PDCA. What we mean by that phrase is plan, do, check and act. This is the sort of management model created by Deming in the 1950s. It's a circular continuous feedback loop. And as you can see, at the heart of this feedback loop is leadership, which is chapter 5 of the ISO. So everything you do within ISO links back to the rest of the cycle. So obviously that's quite important that you see it as an iterative process, and you can continuously improve as you go round and round and round this circle of planning, doing, checking and acting. If we could have the next slide, please, Andrea. Okay, this is a diagram just to explain and help viewers to understand that ISO is effectively a family of standards. So you can have a brother and a sister and a cousin, and they all talk to each other, they interlink with each other, and it is very possible to build an integrated management system. So you could have 9 for your quality, 14 for your environmental, 50,001 for your energy, 27001, which is the data security one, and you can knit them all together like Lego bricks and build a lovely wall of different standards together. So if we could have the next slide, please, Andrea. Thank you. So we're just going to look in more detail as to the actual clauses now of the new ISOs and context of the organisation, which is chapter 4. This is relatively new for the ISO systems. So if you're looking at this for the first time, it's a good thing that they've introduced, I believe. So 4.1, context of the organisation, internal, external factors. 4.2, understanding the needs and expectations of your interested parties. So you have to list in the form of a table who your interested parties are. Do they have any needs from you? Do they have any expectations from you? Do those needs become linked to compliance, i.e. legislative or regulatory compliance? 4.3, you have to document the scope of your energy management system, environmental management system and quality management system. And 4.4 is your actual documentation. You may store it on a shared drive if you have Microsoft, or you may be a bit old school and still have a printed manual or a series of A4 files. Lots of people are now moving their systems over onto electronic shared drives. And something interesting about the context on clause 4.1, if you do understand your internal and external issues, this makes the standards work so much better because you understand the risks associated with the internal and external factors. So if we could have the next slide, please, Andrea. Okay, so thinking strategically about quality, energy and environmental management, what does this actually mean? In practice, practically, it means if you choose to implement these standards, you have to align them to your business plan. So what is the strategic direction? Are you thinking about opening a new factory, a new warehouse? Do you want to take on more staff? Do you want to invest in another business? And how does this impact on your risk and opportunities? So for example, if you are building a new factory, then clearly there's going to be dust, there's going to be noise, there's going to be emissions, there's going to be health and safety related aspects. If you want to take on more staff, you're going to have to train them up. You might be using more energy, you might be producing more waste. If you're going to invest in new businesses, and so on and so on. So it's thinking through the practical reality of aligning 9 and 14 with the strategic direction. I'll give you an example. We recently moved office, so there were risks and opportunities associated with moving office, which we mapped out and documented as part of our 9001 quality management system. Could we have the next slide, please, Andrea? Thank you. Moving on to leadership, which is new for both 9, 14 and 50,001. What we expect to see under the leadership and commitment chapter, clause 5.1, are senior managers, usually it's directors within the company, who understand what quality means, what environmental management means, and what energy management means in terms of product stewardship, being committed to driving continuous improvement across the business, and supporting other people who may be delivering the ISO management system. Okay, the senior manager in the company is required to sign the quality, the energy, and the environmental policies. So they put their name to these documents, which, as you can imagine, is pretty serious level commitment. In terms of roles, responsibilities, and authorities, they have to delegate certain tasks to certain people, including contractors and subcontractors within the organisation. And the leaders of your business have to show how they are protecting the environment. So it's not enough to just write the policy and walk away. They have to be proactively involved. And for example, they have to sit in and attend and contribute to the management reviews, which we'll come on to. So Andrea, could we have the next slide, please? So yeah, just to reiterate, the leadership role, they can't just sign the policy and walk away. They have to communicate, direct, support, and also promote your energy system, your environmental system, and your quality system. So it's quite a big ask for leadership. If we could move on to the next slide, please, Andrea. Great. Okay, so let's have a look at energy environmental quality policies. These policies must commit your business to protect the environment, prevent pollution, and you can refer to sustainable resource use, climate change, mitigation and adaptation, protection of biodiversity and ecosystems. So as a business, you may choose to sponsor a local wildlife reserve, a local species. You might sponsor the World Wildlife Foundation or something similar like that. They must all be signed off by top management and have relevance to your internal and external issues. They must also include the words, be committed to continual improvement of your energy and environmental performance. And the policy must be maintained and communicated within the business and also outside of the business. Now, the most simple way you can achieve this is to put your policy onto your website or onto your social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, etc., so that anyone who is classed as an interested party can read it, see that, and engage with that. If we could have the next slide, please, Andrea. Great. So now we're moving on to the planning clauses of the ISO standards, which are very meaty. There is quite a lot of work that you need to do as part of your planning prior to working towards certification. So as you can see, section 6.1 to 6.4 and then 6.2 to 6.22 is all about thinking through your risks, your opportunities, your environmental and energy aspects. So how do you interact with the environment? How can you interact with energy across your business? Think through carefully all the lovely list of laws, legislation and regulation, both within your country and possibly cross-border with your neighbouring countries or where you may ship your products and services to. And then think through carefully quality, energy and environmental objectives, targets, and discuss those with your team. You know, what's practical, what can you achieve, how do they link back to your policies on energy, environment and quality. And critically now, life cycle thinking. We have to think about raw materials, design, transportation, end of life and treatment at end of life. So womb to tomb, cradle to grave. If we could have the next slide, please, Andrea. Okay, thank you. So life cycle thinking, which is new in ISO 14001.2015, this encourages you to look at your aspects and your impacts to the environment using what's called a life cycle approach. It is not a full-blown life cycle assessment, do not panic, but consideration must be given. And the words from the standard include raw material acquisition, generation from natural resources, production, transportation, delivery, use, end-of-life treatment and final disposal. So it's documenting that in the form of a spreadsheet or a table as part of your environmental and energy management system. If we could have the next slide, please, Andrea. Okay, this is the fun part of the ISO standards, the actual objectives and targets. So what is it you would like to achieve as part of your ISO management system? You have to take into account when setting your energy environmental quality objectives, your significant aspects, and from the energy review, what's called the significant energy users. You have to think carefully about your compliance, so what laws apply to you, and the risk and the opportunities. So the higher the risk, the greater the chance there is you will set an objective and a target to manage that risk. What is also new for the 2015 version is indicators. Indicators have to be defined and documented, which will support your progress towards achieving and demonstrating the achievement of your objectives. So a classic example would be kilowatt hours of energy consumed per tonne of product, meters cubed of water used as part of your process per tonne of product, and so on and so on and so on. The standard does give you some help on the indicators, but for energy management, there is another standard called ISO 50006. That's 50,006, which is all about energy performance indicators. Okay, so an indicator has to be measurable and it represents the condition or status of your operations, management or conditions. Can we have the next slide, please, Andrea? Okay, so the new standards have a new focus now on improving the environmental performance of your organisation and communication of this performance. So ideally, some sort of graph, bar chart, pinned up on the notice board where you can communicate transparently to your staff, to your team, to your suppliers and visitors and contractors. Okay, we've generated this much waste this month, this is how much we've recycled, this is our carbon footprint, this is how much water we've used, this is how much packaging we've recycled. Whatever metrics it is that you want to communicate, you do have to clearly now communicate those through some sort of communication channel. There is also a new focus on the indicators, so environmental KPIs, energy KPIs, quality KPIs. And the performance of your business has to obviously be related to the management of these risks, be they environmental, energy, or quality. If we could have the next slide, please, Andrea. Okay, so here's a brief recap, and I'll just gently talk through these. All of these new ISOs are based on the new Annex SL structure. There is very much a focus on risk-based thinking. They have to be linked to the strategic management, the strategic direction of your business, and the leaders of your company will be interviewed to demonstrate leadership. There's a strong focus on protecting the environment, set environmental KPIs, energy KPIs. There is a focus on life cycle, but you do not have to do a full-blown LCA. Oddly enough, procedures can be documented or not. We can accept things verbally. Interestingly, the need for preventive action in audits is now seen as continual improvement, and this is a new clause which is designed to ensure that continual improvement happens anyway. So lots of people get confused when doing an internal audit because they might raise non-conformance, put a corrective action in, and then they fail to think about the preventive action. That word preventive action has simply been replaced by continual improvement. Thanks, Andrea. I think there might be one more slide. Okay. Yes, if you're ever stuck when you're looking at the ISOs, the annexes, which are at the back, always flick through to the back. Have a look at Annex A for 50,000 energy, 14 environmental, 9 for your quality, as they do give very, very useful clause by clause descriptions and interpretation. In the United Kingdom, UCAS has said the context of the organisation flows throughout the whole standard. They also do not expect to see audit plans that are death by clause, but looking at your processes. So whether you're a service-based business or a manufacturing-based business, you will have a set of processes. So for example, most businesses have a process for recruitment. Most businesses have a process for sales. So they are things that can be audited. UCAS, again in the UK, expect to see a site visit included in the audit plan, and for those risks and opportunities to be audited at the start of the audit. Now, if you're listening to this webinar thinking, I'd like to become a lead auditor, there are standard bodies that offer exams, and you have to submit continued professional development, CPD. IRCA is one, IEMA is another. So all auditors have to prove that they've got the competency to audit to the standards. If we could have the next slide, please, Andrew. So some of the wonderful benefits that you can gain from energy, quality and environmental management. A logical structure to help you define your processes. Very, very helpful, especially if you're starting out with your business and you want to just jot your thoughts down into process flows, process maps. It will give you a tool to manage your risk and opportunities within your business. Again, very, very helpful for the strategic direction. It allows you to set clear objectives and targets, focus on customer satisfaction, energy management and environmental management. Will give you that structure to conduct your management reviews. They do allow all your staff and subcontractors to be trained to your policies and procedures, which gives transparency. And critically, this is WE, can unlock the supply chain and support tenders by demonstrating that you are managing those key risks. And the last bullet point, supporting the strategic direction of your company, is probably the most important, because you can always refer back to your business plan and your risks and your opportunities. If we could have the next slide, please, Andrea. Great, okay. So we've gone through the formal PowerPoint slides. I'm available now to field any questions that you may have as you've been listening. Andrea, I don't know if you're going to manage this.
Yes, thank you so much, Becky. This was very interesting. I would invite the audience to please write any questions or any comments you may have in the chat box or Q&A box, so that Becky can answer them. This has been very interesting. I have a question.
Okay.
Most of the business owners that might have joined this webinar and will follow up and watch the recording might ask themselves, if they might be in any industry, would you recommend or would you say that there are very important sectors or industry that need to consider ISO as their standards to manage energy? Would you mention some of those sectors or industries?
Yeah, I work a lot with manufacturing of food and also non-food products. Equally, we work with a lot of hotels where they use a lot of energy. Think about all those light bulbs being switched on and all the water that the hotel industry uses, leisure and tourism uses. So it's not just all about sites that make metal products or beans and things like that. We have a lot of service-based businesses as well, and it really does unlock the door to be able to provide your product or service to local government, to big corporates, because you're demonstrating to them that you understand your risk and your opportunity and you are managing them strategically. So you're much more attractive to these big corporates and government in these different sectors: food, non-food manufacturing, leisure and tourism, energy management, if you have these standards, because it shows you are paying attention to these issues.
So you're saying that more and more this is becoming mandatory for companies who want to compete in for contracts with the government or with corporations. This is mandatory more and more, right? That's what you're saying.
Absolutely. In the UK, if you don't have ISO 9001 for quality, you won't get through. Your foot will not get through the door. The environmental standard has become more and more. If you don't have that, you can't provide your service. The energy management standard, which is ISO 50001, in the United Kingdom, it's a option you can choose to comply with the energy saving opportunity scheme regulation, which is across the whole of the EU, all 27 member states. So that is compliance with quite a big energy savings directive, and again, mandatory. It pretty much is mandatory, Andrea, for a lot of big businesses to have the energy management standard. I don't know about America, the US, or any of the other locations where WE operates, but certainly with it in the EU, energy management is a big bonus, and it pretty much is mandatory.
All right, that's good news, I would say. I would encourage all the listeners to please make your questions, write them in the Q&A box or the chat box. If not, you can always follow up with Becky. Her contact information is right there in the screen. We'll send a follow-up email to all the registered participants so that they can watch the recording in case they were not able to join live. Thank you so much, Becky. I don't think we have any questions. This was very interesting, very specific, very. I hope it's very helpful for all the registered participants.
Thank you for the opportunity, Andrea.
Yes, I will follow up with you. The recording will be available. I hope it's also good for you for your learning objectives as well. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great day, everyone. Please continue connecting to our webinar series through our website. You can find a calendar of the sessions that have been booked for the entire year. Thank you so much, Becky, and have a great day.
Thank you, Andrea. Goodbye. Goodbye.
Goodbye.